We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
Go on without me. Just go.
A good soldier never leaves a man behind.
Because I wouldn't give you 2 cents for all your fancy rules if behind them they didn't have a little bit of plain, ordinary, everyday kindness.
Life, finds a way.
Welcome to Silver Screen Biases, where we dig into a critically acclaimed movie and evaluate the truth claims within it. I'm Nelson.
This is Jeff.
And I'm Ben.
Thanks for coming, Ben. It's good to have you on the show.
It's good to be here, man.
So, what is our episode this week, Jeff?
Die Hard, 1988.
Before we get into that, though, we're going to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsor this week, Tuttle Twins. I'm a big fan of Tuttle Twins, and we're excited to have them on board. Check the link in the show notes to see more about them.
What's Tuttle Twins?
Tuttle Twins is...
Great question, Ben.
So, Ben, you are now a father, correct?
I am.
Have you looked into much of children's entertainment, like books and cartoons and stuff?
I've seen my fair share. Yeah.
Have you noticed that it all seems to have, increasingly, there's an agenda to it?
Sure.
Connor Boyack also saw that and didn't like it. Rather than try and just make content that had no agenda, he's like, you know what? I'm going to make counter-agenda content.
Interesting.
So this is content that very specifically is designed to challenge kids to be critical thinkers and challenge parents. They take really great works of literature like Friedrich Bastiat's The Law or Leviathan State or The Creature from Jekyll Island, and then they turn it into a kid's book. And my kids love these books.
Okay.
And recently they actually launched a YouTube series as well. Hilarious cartoon. Strongly recommend it. And they've come on board with us. We have a link on our show. If you go through there and you purchase anything there, we'll get a kickback and they'll know that we sent you. So please check that out. Also, take a moment to share our show with friends if you got value out of our show. Jeff, have you had a chance to look into Tuttle Twins?
Yes. Became familiar with it after you introduced me, Nelson, and it has become a family favorite of ours to have on, and it's safe content that we know, there's no worry about what we're introducing our daughter to and stuff, and having to worry about content or worrying about filtering it. So we're very happy with it. And it's entertaining to the adults as well, too. Like, us as the adults pick up on things, you go, oh, that was nice. That was smart. It's like,
what?
It's fun. So I, as an adult, also enjoy it.
Can't be better than dancing vegetables.
It's pretty close, man. So, as we introduced at the end of our last episode, we are introducing a new segment brought to us by our friend Brad. This new segment is going to be one where, at the end of the episode, we watch the trailer for next week's episode and then make predictions about the plot based on that trailer and then see how close we got. So now that we've seen the episode, Jeff, how close were we?
Oh, well, I was way off. You were way closer.
Okay.
And Sarah had just seen it, so she didn't say much.
Right.
So
she watches it every year with Isaac.
So
it's his favorite Christmas movie.
It's an amazing Christmas movie. And by the way, it is a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
We're not even debating that.
Okay, good.
We're all
I don't have to debate that with people.
Yeah.
Right.
Way more.
They're objectively. If somebody says it's not a Christmas movie,
They're objectively wrong.
objectively wrong. It's
In my opinion, it's more of a Christmas movie than Elf.
That's wrong. That's wrong.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
No, it's so much.
Anyway, we can get into that. This may be our only chance to talk about Elf, so maybe we'll slip that in here. But I remember watching it once way when I was younger. My parents watched it, and then hadn't watched it since I've been married for the last 10 plus years. Mm-hmm. So the trailer for me was very like, oh, I don't remember that. Okay, that's also new. So for me, like, I was not right about any of the dialogue or the storyline. So
I thought I'd seen it as an adult. And as I'm watching the movie, I definitely have not seen this as an adult. The latest I could have seen this movie at least would have been over 10 years ago. So this movie was not fresh for me at all. I had said that I thought that he was returning to see his spouse or ex-wife, and I wasn't sure.
Nailed that one. It's both of them. Yeah, it's actually both, yeah.
Yeah. So I got pretty close in there. And then my overall prediction was that there was going to be, I think I'd said terrorists. And that's technically not true. Not terrorists. We'll get into that.
Right. And talk about that.
And that, but not really. That's going to be something big that we talk about, actually. and that Bruce Willis was a cop that stopped them with a handgun and a can-do attitude
and bare feet.
And I got that part right.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Hans is definitely a different person than Professor Snape. I got that wrong.
For sure.
We got that wrong.
Same actor, but different characters. Yeah.
The suit fools you.
So a few things.
And the goatee.
The goatee is nice.
And then I'd also mention that Reginald Val Johnson is the name of the high school in Rick and Morty. That's wrong. And so when I was trying to fact check myself, I was like, oh, well, maybe it's the high school in Bob's Burgers. That was wrong. It is the name of the high school in Invincible, my favorite comic book series, which got turned into a TV series.
Okay.
And in the TV series, Reginald Val Johnson plays the principal of Reginald Val Johnson High School.
Good old Carl Winslow.
Winslow. This was a breakout film for Rickman, Willis, and Val Johnson. This was like all three of them. This was their first big movie. So quick plot overview. John is a New York City cop. Holly, his estranged wife, is a dedicated and successful career woman. She moved with the kids to Los Angeles 6 months earlier for work. He stayed in New York thinking that she'd come back. Hans Gruber is a terrorist turned thief come to rob the Nakatomi Tower. Gruber wants to steal the $640 million in the Nakatomi Vault, which was worth roughly $1.6 billion in today's money. Hans Gruber deceives everyone into thinking he's a terrorist so that the FBI will get involved. The fake demands would have brought the CIA, not the FBI, but that's, a secondary concern. Gruber is leveraging the FBI's terrorist playbook to aid his heist. John stops him with a handgun and a can-do attitude.
He does get a machine gun at some point.
That's true.
He gets multiple
Ho,
machine
ho,
guns.
ho.
And foreign cigarettes.
Yes.
Let's run through some of these questions that we typically go through.
You want to do stats first?
Let's do stats. Yeah, let's do stats of production history.
All right. Die Hard, 1988. It's a runtime of 2 hours and 12 minutes, rated R. It is 8.2 out of 10 on the IMDb rating scale. It is number 119 as of today as we record this on the IMDb Top 250. Rotten Tomato meter, it is 94%, and the audience is also 94%. The audience and the critics agree on this one. 94% for both. I've got the budget for you, Nelson. The budget for this movie was approximately $30 million in 1988. What does that come about to today?
That comes out to $75.5 million.
Okay. Over doubled
since 1988. And I will never not remind the viewers that inflation robs the nation and it's a no good, very bad thing.
Right. And just staying on that budget topic before we get into the nitty gritty here. This is the first of 5 installments of this movie. Mm-hmm. Die Hard 2 came in 1990, Die Hard with a Vengeance 1995, Live Free or Die Hard 2007, A Good Day to Die Hard 2013. A combined total of $1.4 billion grossed between all 5 movies. Grossed. Yeah. So 5 movies, $1.4 billion grossed between these 5. So I thought that was fascinating.
A lot of cash.
Oh, and he did a Die Hard car battery commercial.
Nice.
And that's in canon now. That's the canon.
Yeah.
So it's Die Hard canon.
What battery company?
Die Hard.
Is Die Hard a
Die
battery
Hard's
company?
a battery company.
Yeah.
Which came first?
Ooh, that's a great question. Let me look that up.
That's not a great name for a battery.
No.
Because, it doesn't say like when it's going to die, but when it does die.
1967. Die Hard Batteries. Sorry, we're still on this. Die Hard Batteries was started by Sears.
Sears Roebuck?
Sears Roebuck, 1967. So 55 years ago. So Die Hard came first. The batteries.
Nice.
The batteries.
Which came first? Die Hard? Die Hard came first? Oh, okay.
Nice.
Neat.
Nice. So that's all the facts I have for you. I have some other fun facts I'll throw in that, depending on the topics that we talk about.
Frank Sinatra was originally, he was slotted to be John McClane in the movie.
What was he going to...
He was in his 70s. Yeah. No. So,
is this a real fact?
Yeah. So it's based on a book.
Okay.
The plot of Die Hard is based on a book called Nothing Lasts Forever.
Okay.
Yep.
Written by Roderick Thorpe. And in the movie version of that movie, Frank Sinatra played the protagonist.
Fascinating.
So he was contractually in line to take the role.
We should.
Nothing
watch-
Lasts Forever?
Nothing Lasts Forever.
Is it also a Christmas movie?
I don't know if it's a Christmas movie. It's not in the book. McClane isn't the protagonist.
Gruber?
No, the cop.
Oh, yeah. Al.
Al. He's the protagonist. He's a retired cop who takes a security consultant job. Yeah, so old Blue Eyes.
This is fascinating. I'm going down the rabbit trail of Frank Sinatra here,
Good old
trying to
Frank.
find that movie. Anyways, that's interesting.
And then we mentioned it at the end of last episode, but I think it's worth repeating. The amount of effort that went into what tank top he was wearing.
I have a fact about that.
Pull that up.
Yep.
The wardrobe department had a bunch of tank tops. And depending on what scene they were shooting, they were very, very careful about continuity and making sure he was wearing the right tank top.
Huh.
And I knew that watching it. And as I'm watching it, I'm thinking, most of the time it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Most of the time he just looks brown.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Just
like
dirty.
Towards like the middle of the movie, he is brown.
It
He's
doesn't take long
consistently
before
the same color.
it's super stretched
17.
out. 17.
The costume
tank tops.
department had 17 undershirts in various stages of degradation on hand for Bruce Willis.
I do
17.
think it makes sense though, because you can tell visually that it's a extremely different color after he gets out of like the air vent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of
After the elevator
one has
ride.
been donated to the Smithsonian too. So if we could all go see that
You
shirt
take
if we wanted
a
to.
field trip, Jeff.
Yeah.
Field trip to the
DC.
Smithsonian.
So I thought it was cool. The Library of Congress has like recognized this movie as like something that needs to be saved, like in the archives.
I saw that
And it's
too.
A
amazing.
film of cultural significance?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. There's an episode of Rick and Morty from this current season where they're at like an arcade, I think, and a heist happens while they're there. And there's like this moment of expository dialogue where it turns out that the Die Hard mythos exists in every culture.
Sure.
We're doing a Die Hard.
That's awesome.
All right, so let's get in a little deeper. Ben or Jeff, either one of you go first. What were some minor observations? Like not the big broad brushstrokes that this movie's communicating, but some little things here and there that you picked up on.
Yeah, the first thing I picked up on, there was a whole storyline about the newscasters that didn't really even
Yeah.
need to happen.
Not only that, it wasn't well executed.
No, we already had a villain in the story.
Yeah.
You didn't
And
need more.
You felt like that whole time that every time that newscaster was on was like, is he the bad guy?
Right.
Is he the mastermind behind all this? Now he's going to John's kid's house? Now he's deporting their nanny? What's happening?
Right.
So Hans Gruber's a saint compared to this newscaster. Like, that was my thought.
Do you think the claim there, though, that journalists are ruthless and will manipulate people like that, do you think that's true?
Okay. From what I know, yes. I've never been a newscaster or a journalist, but like I feel like that stereotype is done so often that like there's got to be some truth to it. There's got to be some sort of like you either get the scoop or you get fired type of heat behind it. It's like I feel like it's done so often that there's got to be some truth behind it. I don't have that firsthand experience. I've never done that. But in this movie, it didn't seem realistic, but I know that there's probably pressure like that in other areas.
Sure. I mean, we've had news stories over the last 4 or 5 years where we've seen journalists behaving that way, not quite so brashly, but it's there.
We got meteorologists like faking windstorms.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
I mean, like you've said, like I've seen that multiple times.
We've got journalists for big accomplished newspapers doxing people,
yeah,
right? Not in a way that brings more to the story. It's clearly designed to target and harass
right,
people. Like so yeah, absolutely. We see that.
yeah. So that was
You were going to say something, Ben.
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, not as brash as it is in the movie. I think the point of him being that forward in the movie was to like exaggerate it to the point of being irritated at that character. But you definitely see like if there's a big news story about somebody, like 4 vans parked out in front of somebody's house and everybody's out there pointing cameras at their house waiting for them to come out. It's definitely a thing that happens.
It's kind of gross. Do you think that that's
Taking advantage of somebody's misfortune to get a story.
Do you think that is a net positive, negative, or neutral on society?
If it was occasional and justified, maybe. But the fact that the majority of the news is mostly that, it's not good.
In my perspective, and I know there's no like altruistic way to say this, but like if they're going after a scumbag to get information, then it doesn't really bother me. But if they're going after someone who's just lost someone out of a tragedy, and they're trying to get a story, and this poor person or family has suffered enough, and they're trying to get in their face and trying to get the story, like I feel like for me, like I have sympathy for the people that are in pain. I don't have sympathy for people who have hurt someone else and they've got the news in their front yard.
Right.
So whether or not that's right on either side, I don't know. But like for me, like I could be easily convinced to sway one way or the other, depending on the person that they're interviewing.
Well, one's made for a purpose and one's made for entertainment, right? So if you're going after somebody who's lost something dear to them or someone dear to them, that's an attempt to pull on people's heartstrings to get views.
Right.
But if you're questioning somebody who's done something wrong, like somebody who's scammed people out of money, you're informing people that this is a thing and this is the person that's doing it. So one has a purpose and one's just to get views.
I'd also say though, the people that we would feel most comfortable with it happening to, the people that it's most justified happening to, are people in positions of power who are also best leveraged to make sure it doesn't happen to them.
Yeah.
That's usually how it works.
Yeah. All right. What other observations?
I don't really know if this is a good observation or not, but they made a pretty big statement about technology.
Yeah.
Like, towards the beginning. So the big hullabaloo about the skyscraper is that it's super technologically advanced. You know, when he comes in and signs in, he uses a touch screen and they're making jokes about
a touch screen that's way clunkier than what we have today and not near as good.
10.
Yeah.
So
It was 1988 though. So.
That's true.
Sure.
But I mean, Star Trek was already thinking bigger than that. But I don't know.
They also-
I guess it was supposed to be that day.
But this movie wasn't like Die Hard's not a science fiction movie,
Right, and it's
just,
not set in the future. It's
Right.
set in
and they
1988.
definitely push back against technology.
Yeah.
Because so what they did is they showed like the problem with consolidating all of your functions of a building, including security, into one hackable thing, right?
Yeah, they
so
did.
and before that, you had a security guard and door locks and elevators and cameras and stuff like that, and they're all separately. You had to have a contingency for all of those things,
right?
But for this, they just had to kill the security guard and then hack the computer, and they had the whole building.
And then shut down the power on to get
in the
past
grid, which they got the cops to do. But
also, I would like to say any lock that is electrically powered, and this might not have been true in 1988, but it's certainly true now, and it might be because of things like what they exposed in Die Hard. But if you have an electric lock, when it loses power, it stays locked. It doesn't unlock.
Right.
Yeah, there was definitely some miscues in that.
Like it's still a problem, but it's a problem in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they pushed back on technology and kind of made it seem like it wasn't necessarily the best thing and something that they dived head forward into, thinking it was going to be the best thing ever and so fancy, but not necessarily practical in all senses.
Right. You mentioned the newscaster and how that was kind of like a wasted amount of screen time. Another wasted screen time that I saw, movie opens up with him on the airplane and he's anxious about flying, which kind of humanizes him, right? He's not Superman.
Right. He's got some fears.
And it seems like they're setting up that, maybe he's afraid of heights or something. And then they never use that in the movie. In fact, he does things that anybody scared of heights would never, ever do.
And he says, John, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But still.
He acknowledges his fear, but
I think the reason for that scene was to get the guy to tell him about taking off his shoes and scrunching on the carpet, just so he would not be wearing shoes when the terrorists started, so that they could have the scene about him being shoeless.
You could just as easily have him I need to take a shower because I've been traveling all day.
See, but that's one of the things I liked about it is there's little details set up from the beginning that see show up later on in the movie.
It would have been more sense if he found his way back on a plane at some point in the movie when they acknowledged his fear of flying, and then somehow he had to get back on a plane to accomplish the goal.
Sure.
It's like, But
I wonder if they
Just-
reuse it at all in the later movies.
Oh,
it's
they
true.
do. They definitely
They
do.
do. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I know he hangs on a wing of an airplane in Live Free or Die Hard.
Yeah.
But I don't remember Die Hard with a Vengeance, and I haven't seen Die Hard Good Day to Die Hard, so I don't
Die
know.
Hard 2 is
What's the
amazing.
one that's got Justin Long in it?
That's the third one. That's the fourth one. Live Free or Die Hard.
I saw that one when it came out.
That's the technological warfare one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When
that one's really good.
It's, it's really
yeah,
well set up.
that came out in 2007.
Yeah, I remember watching that with my brother when
Yeah.
it came out,
But
and we laughed through the whole
It was
thing.
there's a term that they use. Not black market. I can't. There's a specific name of the type of warfare or
Dark web.
Cyber?
It's a cyber attack, but like they use a specific word in Live Free or Die Hard that explained kind of like what the villains were doing. And I can't think of it, but the whole movie revolves around them. I'll look it up. Continue.
Sure.
Another thing, and again, minor observation here. So that guy that gave him the tip of scrunching his feet.
Yeah.
He then reaches up to get his carry-on, and he's got a handgun in his waistband.
Yeah.
And the guy's freaked out, and that very much tells us in a post 9/11 world that this is not
Oh yeah.
that this is before 9/11
Oh, yeah.
because he's flying.
He would
with
have
a
gotten within
handgun.
100 yards of that plane.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing: he's not even an air marshal.
Yeah.
He's just a cop of 11 years.
Yep.
I've been a cop for 11 years, so I've got a handgun on a plane flying across the country. And that's just
That means I'm stable.
and that's just absurd
Sure.
by modern flight
From where
safety
we are
stuff.
now.
Yeah.
There's also kind of speaks to the competency of police officers, but people in power. And it seems that as you get higher in the power scale,
Yeah.
the less incompetent you are. So you have a beat cop, an Al, who's trying to be down to earth, trying to be encouraging, trying to help John get through the whole situation, and then you have his boss, who's just all about the glory. Let's see how much glory I can get from charging in head first. And then you have the FBI, who are we're here to mess.
Fire sale. Fire sale.
Fire sale?
Fire sale. Live Free or Die Hard. It's when they wipe your social security account information. They just wipe the
that's
slate.
right.
It's called a fire sale.
Yeah,
So that whole
that's,
movie revolves around a fire
That's
sale.
what the end of Fight Club is. There's a
I
fire-
don't remember.
They blow up some credit buildings. So I want to clarify something you said there, because I think you might have said it backwards. You said the more authority and power you have, the less incompetent you are.
No, the
And
more
you-
incompetent.
The more,
you are.
yeah. That's actually.
I think I said less competent, but I could be wrong.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
often say things
Straight
like
out of Compton.
straight out of Compton.
Straight out of competent. Yeah. On that topic, because that's actually one of my big takeaways from this movie.
Sure.
In a free market, quality and competency is rewarded with success.
Sure.
Right? So, Argyle, the taxi driver, the limo driver, drops him off.
The real hero of the story.
He's a boss.
And,
for sure.
As Argyle says, hey, if things are working out with your wife, let me know and I'll take off.
Bring up the luggage and take off.
Exactly. But if not, I'll take you to somewhere you can stay. And he says, you're a good man, Argyle. And Argyle responds, just remember that when you sign for the tip.
Yeah.
Right? Because Argyle is an entrepreneur. He's like, this is the way I make money, is by providing excellent service, And then Joe Takagi, who is the head of the Nakatomi
CEO.
Tower. Yeah. Gruber goes through his resume, and it's a very impressive resume.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? So, it's clear Joe Takagi, through whatever means, achieved a lot of success, but he's got a lot of work to show for it to get him there. And the market rewards that kind of work. But in a monopoly, success and innovation isn't rewarded. Safe choices are rewarded in monopolies. And typically what we see with monopolies is incompetence and inefficiencies kind of pollute the whole process. And that's one of the big issues with having centralized intelligence, centralized defense and security and rights enforcement. And the problem of monopoly on policing, on rights enforcement, is one of the big themes recurring through this movie.
Sure.
We'll get into that a little later because I've got it pretty well written out here, but that's a big takeaway in this movie.
Sure.
But Argyle, yeah, he was
Argyle was great.
He's the best.
Argyle's a business. He sat in that limo for how long?
Like 4 hours.
Like 4 hours, just
Well-
drinking and listening to music really, really loud on the telephone with a teddy bear.
It was a good 2 or 3 hours before he even realized he was locked in there.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
You could see the gate close behind him the whole time.
Yeah.
In the flashing security light. Yeah, no, he's a boss.
The first guy that dies in the movie.
The security guard.
Okay, hold
behind
on.
the computer.
The first of the thieves
Terrorists.
that
Oh, the first bad guy.
the
Yeah.
first bad guy
Gotcha.
looks like Jeffrey Dahmer.
He does.
And I was wondering if this was a choice, and then I thought about it, and it's not likely that it was because Dahmer wasn't charged for like another 3 years.
Sure.
So
That's
this guy
true.
just happens to
To
look
look
exactly like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah.
Another big takeaway, or I suppose minor takeaway from this movie, is that the difference between protagonist heist movies like Ocean's 11 and antagonist heist movies like this is whether or not they kill people.
Mm.
The motivation's the exact same. I want money.
Yeah, they don't They don't kill anybody in Oceans, do they?
No.
No. There's deaths in Oceans, though, isn't there?
Yeah, people die, but
Yeah.
But not by
Not by the hand.
not by
of
the hand of
11.
Danny Ocean or his people.
Right.
Same thing with the Italian Job.
yeah.
Great movie.
Italian
So
Job.
good.
They the heroes of the movie are still criminals.
They're villains, yeah.
They're still robbing and
They're-
causing
they're
property
Robin
destruction.
Hoods.
But they're not because they're not robbing it to give away. They're robbing it for themselves.
But,
Oh, for sure
but they
themselves.
need it.
But they want it real
But
bad.
they need it.
And the only difference in movies like between the antagonist and the protagonist for a heist is do they kill people?
So, I don't know if it's not clear, but I'm pretty sure one of the terrorists doesn't die.
Which one?
So he kills all of them. All of them die, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except for one. Towards the very end, right before the scene where he has the gun taped to his back,
Yeah.
the guy
Yeah.
the guy who's hacking the
safe.
safe,
The
two people don't die.
The nerdy guy.
The nerdy guy, he just
The
gets
black
punched
guy.
out by Argyle. He doesn't die.
That's true, yeah. He just rams his car. Yeah, so there's...
And then the
Argyle
guy
does not kill
the
him.
guy who was
I thought it was an interesting choice, and our current social expectations on representation in film have caused me to be hyper aware of representation in film,
Sure.
where I wouldn't have been before, and I thought it was interesting that the only black villain is taken out by one of the two black protagonists.
Sure. Yeah.
And who was the second guy you said?
So okay. Which, by the way, the guy who plays the guy who's hacking the vault,
Yeah,
Clarence Gillis or whatever his name is,
Okay.
Gilliard,
yeah.
I think his name. Anyways, he's in Walker, Texas Ranger, so I
Wait,
recognized
is he-
him
is
almost
he-
immediately. He's Trevette, James Trevette.
Really?
Yeah, he's Walker's sidekick.
I did not pick up on
So he's out there roundhouse kicking with Chuck Norris the whole time. It's awesome.
I got to pull it up because Argyle is somebody else as well. Argyle has been in other stuff, and I can't remember who.
But yeah, the other person who didn't die is the guy who was helping him crack the safe the whole time. So there's a scene where Trevette, which I know is not his name, that's the only way I'm going to refer to him, except
Alexander Trevette.
instead of the James Trevette, instead of the
That's cool.
vault guy. When he goes out and then Argyle T-bones him with a limousine and punches him out.
Yeah.
Right after that, there's a scene that the guy that was helping him crack the safe runs out, and John McClane just hits him in the head with a gun, knocks him out.
Okay, so there's two terrorists,
Two
two
that don't
thieves
die.
that may not have died. The actor that plays Argyle in 1980 had a bit part in one of my favorite movies, which is Blues Brothers. Have you seen Blues Brothers?
I have not.
It's been a
I've seen
long
people
time.
dance to that song in Blues Brothers.
Blues Brothers is phenomenal. There's a scene in it where Ray Charles runs a pawn shop that sells music, that's music equipment. Nice. And the actor that plays Argyle, while the Blues Brothers are talking to Ray Charles, the actor that plays Argyle sneaks in and tries to steal a guitar, and Ray Charles pulls out a gun and shoots at him.
And misses him, right?
Oh, he misses him, yeah. But it says it was on. He says he missed on purpose, but so yeah, he played the young guitar thief in that scene, and
Nice.
that for me was particularly funny because that's one of my favorite movies.
And according to IMDb, Argyle comes back for the 2020 commercial for the Die Hard battery.
Oh, does he?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
he's credited as being in that commercial. I've got to watch that again, but the actor that plays Argyle comes back for that commercial. That's fun.
Thoughts on Gruber?
So good.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I think he's a well portrayed
villain.
thief.
Okay.
No, he wouldn't be the henchman, right? The other guys would be the henchmen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's right.
He would be
he's the villain.
Yeah,
the hench,
the hench. Ooh.
the big hench. Yeah, no, I think he was very well played. Alan Rickman's a boss.
Yeah, rest in peace. Yeah, I like Alan Rickman a lot.
But I think like he's very much cast as somebody who knows exactly what he wants and how to get it, and is trying to be very, very confident in the plan that he's set up.
He didn't hold his cool real well though.
No,
Like, I mean, and even the hostages started to realize, like, when something was going awry, like, Hans he didn't have a good poker face when stuff was going
well,
bad.
he had his right hand man Carl going nuts trying to find this guy. So
Right.
because his brother got murdered.
I've seen some other movies, though, where, like, the villain, the whole time,
accident,
up until
by the
his
way.
demise, the whole time's like, no, I've got this right where I want this.
Yeah, one of the
Like,
things.
there's moments where Hans is very much like, no, we'll be okay. But you can tell he's winging it.
Sure. Oh yeah. He definitely. I think that was well portrayed too. That he was not expecting John to be there or be doing what he's doing.
I think that he very much is supposed to be this kind of erudite, educated, classy thief. And whether you want to consider it bad writing or kind of like 2 steps removed great writing by subverting, he's not as classy as he wants himself to be portrayed. The two big moments that we have that kind of establish him as this man of means, man of authority, man of education. So he's in the elevator with Joe Takagi, and he points to Takagi's suit and says, I can't remember what the name of the tailor was, but it's a fake tailor in London. And he says, I have a few of those myself. And rumor has it Arafat buys his there, establishing that the two of them are both men of means and men of class. Arafat, of course, that's a reference to Yasser Arafat. I had to double check in 1988, like what would have been known about Arafat. So Arafat had been leading a paramilitary organization seeking to replace Israel with Palestine. But in 1988, so like 6 months before this movie is released, he had publicly acknowledged Israel's right to exist and sought a 2-state solution. And shortly after got a Nobel Peace Prize for this.
Interesting.
So the Nobel Peace Prize wasn't in 88, but this is like him acknowledging a 2-state solution would have been something in the cultural psyche when Gruber references Arafat buying his suits there. Shortly after that, we have him looking at a model of the Nakatomi Tower. And he says, and when Alexander saw the breadth of his domain, he wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer. The benefits of a classical education.
Yeah.
In my experience, almost anytime somebody quotes something vaguely poetic, it's almost always Shakespeare. And so I was like, what's this from? So I did some research into this. This is interesting, I thought. So I'm reading from Reddit, and I will link that in the show notes. So there's a short and simple explanation to where this is from, and it is that it's from nowhere.
What?
He's not quoting anything.
He's just saying it?
Yeah, so it's sometimes cited that the movie invented the quote out of thin air, but there are actually precedents from the 18th century onward, with a general idea mentioned in The Way of the World, which was printed in 1700, then paralleled in Why Alexander Wept in 1905, and of late I think of Cliffordville, which is an episode from The Twilight Zone in 1963. All of them carry the same connotation, that a man is unsatisfied once he gets everything he wants.
Sure.
If this saying didn't originate in antiquity, does it have a kernel therein, or at the very least? The answer is yes. And it is indeed Plutarch, part of the healthy classical education, but Hans was probably snoozing through that lesson because the Moralia instead says this. Alexander wept when he heard Anaxarchus discourse about an infinite number of worlds, and when his friends inquired what ailed him, is it not worthy of tears, he said, that when the number of worlds is infinite, we have not yet become lords of a single one? So this is actually like the polar opposite of what's being propounded in the quote. Alexander is complaining because he hasn't actually conquered the whole world, and even if he did, he'd never get to conquer any others unless he waited for Hero of Alexandria to invent the rocket ship. So yeah, we have him referencing Arafat, right? So and then also later when he's talking about, when he's making his demands, he references one of these terrorist organizations that he wants prisoners freed from.
Several.
And he said he'd read, well, one of them specifically, he says, turns to one of his henchmen and says, I read about them in Time magazine. So I got the impression that Hans Gruber is much more like, have you ever seen Dirty Rotten Scoundrels?
No, but I know a couple.
Easy now.
So Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is a movie about these con artists. Michael Caine is training Stephen Martin to be a con artist, a better con artist. And one of the ways that Michael Caine says, like, you to establish yourself as a quality con artist, to pull off these heists, you need to be a man of class and education, blah, blah, blah. So I got the impression more for Hans Gruber that this is all theatrics.
Sure.
He's not this classically educated man. He happened to recognize a suit and for all we know is just making up garbage about it. So I think, and this is all headcanon, of course, this isn't actually put into the movie, but I don't think that Hans Gruber is the gentleman thief that he presents himself as.
He's putting up a facade.
Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely thought in both of those situations when he was talking about the suit and when he was talking about his classical education, it came off as braggy, where it was like,
almost
look at this thing that I know.
Mm-hmm.
Dirty Rotten Scoundrels also came out in 1988.
Did it?
Yep.
I love that movie. It's one of my favorites. Nice. What about you guys? Any of them on your observations or things that stuck on the movie?
Another thing, there was multiple throughout the whole movie. There was multiple comparisons or acknowledgments to make it so that we had it on the forefront of our mind that there was not a peaceful thought, but of the LAPD versus the NYPD. Like, it seemed like they didn't.
Interesting.
As soon as they found out he was from New York, I don't know. I felt like that was the linchpin, and like, oh, we're not happy this guy's in the building. I don't care if he's a cop or not. He's from New York. They didn't play well with others. The FBI didn't play well with Reginald Vell Johnson, and they didn't play well with NYPD cop John McClane. Like, so I didn't know. I think it was minor.
LAPD either.
There's a trend in media where they portray jurisdictional disputes as being very almost like
gangs.
High school politics, even
gang territory.
Sure. I have no experience there, so I don't know if that's true or not. But it's such a trend in media that I would assume that there's some ounce of truth there. And
you see that in a lot of movies. Like, well, even disregarding the whole John McClane being from New York, but like the LAPD with the FBI, like not playing well. Like, it wouldn't happen that way.
You don't think?
I would assume that, like, I'm not a cop. But like, in my mind, I think both parties would know that we will better achieve our goal if we work together, because the moment they start putting up walls, the moment that they're going to be like, well, I'm not going to play well with you if you're not playing well with me. Like, just like, I feel like they're both trained to be like, let's get all the information out. Let's I don't know. I guess I'm an optimistic in that point of view, is where I'm like, if someone's in danger or some city's in danger, I would hope that all parties would play well nicely together. Because Reginald Vell Johnson's character, I can't think of his character's name, and Al. The FBI, Al, his very long name of Al, like they have nothing to gain by being mad at each other. Right. Like, so like, that just seems like they're trying to get more emotions out of us in a place where we're in real life. It would be tense, but I still feel like they would be cordial and respectful. If not, you can be intense and you can be short, but you can be like, hey, we're on the same team. I think that there's an issue of incentive structures. Incentive structures? Yeah. Structures as in like business plans, profits?
Yeah, the whole reason...
incentives do the cops have for like...
Well, Al's incentive is to go home and see his family.
Right.
And for the most part, for people to be safe.
Right. You're saying the FBI
sergeant
don't want to see
He's
their
not a sergeant.
family.
He's a captain, right?
He's a sergeant.
Yeah.
Is he a sergeant?
Al's sergeant. I haven't written that
No.
here.
His boss
His
is a
boss.
captain.
Let me.
The captain.
I wrote it down here. His
Deputy
boss
sheriff.
is deputy sheriff. You're right.
Yeah. His motive, I guess, is to move up, right? He wants to take control of the situation. He wants to be in charge. He wants to be the one calling the shots. Presumably, and this isn't necessarily said in the movie, but presumably to be noticed as a leader. And I mean, in your job, the reason you want to be noticed as a leader is to be promoted, probably. But the FBI, the one guy is just like Saigon. I mean, he's just reliving
Glory days of the
days.
Vietnam War, killing commies.
quote unquote glory days.
I touched on it earlier, and I have two big observations from this movie, and we'll get into this one now. That defense, security, and rights enforcement are too important to trust to monopolies.
Sure.
In every industry where we have markets, where we have competition, we get lower cost, higher quality, better service.
Mm-hmm.
In industries where we have very few competitors, we get higher costs, lower quality, lower service. In industries where we only have one provider, we get high cost, low quality, low service.
Mm-hmm.
With rights enforcement, which is policing, with defense, which would be military, with security, which would also be military, but also intelligence, because it's a monopoly. Like the FBI handles all things federal.
Yeah,
The
it's in
CIA
the name.
handles all things outside the country.
Right.
The LAPD handles all policing in LA.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. It wasn't very clear in the
crazy,
movie.
right?
LAP.
So
Okay.
It's almost like they
because they have a monopoly on the service for that area, there's no competition. They don't have to provide a service that's going to bring the best quality to their customers. And instead, it leads to low quality, high costs, okay? For example, the Jeffrey Dahmer terrorist says to John McClane, "You won't hurt me because you are a policeman and there are rules for policemen." And then John McClane responds, "Yeah, my captain keeps telling me the same thing." Now, in that moment, we're supposed to be like, "Yeah, you go, John McClane." But if you stop and think about what that means, it means that this guy constantly violating the rules set in place to protect not just him, but the people that he serves, right? The people of New York, right? And then one of the people that, I can't remember if it's one of the thieves or one of the policemen, but they're talking about John McClane and they say his job, quote unquote, is 3,000 miles away. Okay? Now, in that point, like they're making the observation of their expectation that because he's not in New York, he shouldn't be doing rights enforcement. So for them, like, this is just a job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to make sure that LA is as safe as possible.
Right.
I'm here to collect a paycheck.
I'm not.
And if I'm not in LA or if I'm off the clock, I'm not going to be making sure people's rights are protected.
Whereas that's the total opposite for John. I don't matter if I clock in or not. Like,
Right.
no one's going to die on my watch. That is
Right. Even if he's somebody that breaks the rules in New York, at least he is like he's pursuing
right.
rights and
It's kind of like the
Purpose is justice.
I mean,
Right.
from the same era of movies. If you look at the Lethal Weapon movies,
Sure.
you know, like Danny Glover and Mel Gibson, like
yeah.
it's kind of that same thing. Like one good cop, bad cop. Essentially, one's stick by the rules, and the other one's like, I'll do whatever it takes to get the results that we're both trying to work on.
Right.
But they're both moralistically going after the same goal.
Sure.
Like they both want to protect and serve.
Right.
One is maybe an anti-hero, one's more of a
Chaos
altruistic
and order.
hero. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's
Just some other things here that are listed out in the movie that kind of highlight police incompetence. So bureaucracy gets in the way of the radio dispatcher sending assistance.
Sure.
John McClane gets on a radio, gets in touch with them, and she just assumes they're being pranked.
yeah.
Now, if there was a market for security and that incident happened, that security firm is losing a client that day,
Yeah.
Sure.
right? And when you don't have those checks and balances of market forces, you open yourself up for a lot of what happens in this movie. For example, the police responding with extreme force on Nakatomi Tower, despite the fact that the most senior officer on the site doesn't think that there is a legitimate threat. They drive an armored vehicle into the front
car.
door, even though he doesn't think there's terrorists there.
To be fair, they don't make it to the front door.
Of course.
They crash
right?
on the steps.
So, like, not only is he not taking the threat seriously, he's responding with
Improportionate
force. Like there's just a lot of this. It's like that to me, and I know this is just a movie. It's a work of fiction, but there's a lot of truth to the things that show up here. We see this a lot. So I did some research. In 1988, LA isn't exactly a peaceful and safe era.
Nope.
So the police should be on alert, not with slow reaction times, which are on full display in the movie. In 2021, so last year, the violent crime rate in Los Angeles is 585.8. Okay, so that's taking the total number of violent crimes, dividing by the population estimate, and then multiplying by 100,000. What that roughly works out to is that 0.5% of LA residents will experience a violent crime.
Sure.
In 1988, it wasn't 585.8, it was 1,410.7,
That's
meaning
substantially worse.
Yowzers.
1.4% of LA residents. So 3 times as much.
Yeah.
So crime in LA right now, we have a rough idea of what LA crime is like,
Sure.
just from media. It was 3 times as bad in 1988. And we see the police just kind of being like, we'll check in on it. Right? And yes, that attitude is what leads to crime rates like that. But at the same time, if your crime rate's like that and you've got several competing rights enforcement companies, the ones that react like that are losing customers.
Sure.
They're not going to make it in the market, and they will the ones that do it well are going to do it even better and cheaper with less violence, because violence is expensive, right? Like if let's say that I'm the company that provides defense for Jeff's building, and we get a notice
building,
that
Jeff?
The Jeffatomi Tower.
the Jeffatomi Tower,
Towers.
Yes.
right? And we get
Just one tower.
we get an alert that the Jeffatomi Tower
make another
has thieves in it. If we show up and we run a tank through his front door, and he asks why, and we're like, we got a call. We weren't even sure if there was anybody there. Like, we're not his rights enforcement provider tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? He's gonna get somebody else. So and so for a lot of this, it's like this movie just really drove home that for me.
Sure.
And then it got worse, right? Because the LA, like we already saw the issue with John McClane, right? He doesn't obey the rules in New York. Then we see the LAPD and everything they're doing. Sergeant Al Powell, who is very much a protagonist of the movie, we find out he's been a desk jockey for several years.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember why?
Because he shot a kid.
He shot a kid.
Who had a toy
ray
phaser,
gun.
A ray gun.
Now, do you remember if he was put to desk duty or if he chose desk duty?
He chose this.
He chose desk duty. What does that tell you about the LAPD?
He shot a kid, and they didn't force him to be on desk duty.
He shot a 13-year-old with a plastic gun, and they would have let him continue to patrol.
Sure.
Again, if you've got competing companies trying to provide safety for an area,
It doesn't benefit you financially to have somebody like that.
exactly. If you have a guy that shoots a 13-year-old kid, at least for PR alone, he's not going to be out there,
Sure.
right? So, like, again, that was one of those things. Like, Sergeant Al, obviously a good dude.
Sure.
He made a mistake. These things happen in these high-pressure situations. If the LAPD hadn't been trained to resort to violence quickly,
Sure.
which we already see that they've done, he might not have shot this 13-year-old kid.
Yeah.
But that he chose desk work tells us his character. Like, he's a good dude, just the training is bizarre. And then we see top-down incompetence with the city engineers, FBI, and police arguing about how to shut off the power to the building. And the guy in the manhole, I'm pretty sure...
Yeah, he's
is-
like, I could
do
just
it.
right
I could
now.
just do it right now. And instead they knock out power to the entire city block.
Yeah.
Like, again, just like this. How do I put this politely? Because I want to say dick measuring contest. How do I?
No, that's what it is.
I mean, you just said it. So
I know. I'm going to
We'll
edit
go
it.
with that. We'll go
Yeah.
with that.
It's
We
just
don't know
like
what you
this.
Member measuring.
Yeah, this pissing contest between these different.
I don't know if piss is better than dick, but sure.
Yeah, it's
Same anatomical.
you've got the city engineer,
They do the
the
same. Yeah.
deputy sheriff, I think it was,
Deputy sheriff.
and the FBI special agent, all arguing over how
Special
to shut off
Agent
power
Johnson
to the
and
building.
Johnson.
And the guy that knows it most is being ignored.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
And then
Well, I mean, you see that with John McClane.
yes,
John McClane's going, "Don't do that.
yeah,
Don't do that. Are you listening to me? Don't do that." And they're like, "No, shut up. Hold on. We know
Well,
what
that's
we're
the
doing."
same.
It's
Like
the
him,
exact same concept.
between him and Al, both of them are thinking practically about the situation and trusting each other about what the other one's saying.
Yeah.
yes.
And their higher ups are completely ignoring that. It's like, of course, we don't even know. I forget what he says. There's an instance where 100% makes sense what John and Al are saying, and then the deputy sheriff says, "Well, it could be so and so," and
That's
that
when they send
exclamation.
the four guys to the door
Yes.
when they're dialoguing about sending those four
Yeah.
people, just 4 people up.
Yeah, he says something that doesn't even like remotely
Yeah.
classify as rational.
So I've got 2 more points on this topic, and then I want you guys to push back on me. Tell me why I'm wrong about this, because this is very much my biases, and I know that, and I know, Jeff, you're a lot more sympathetic to, in a lot of ways, the way things are already set up. So my 2 last points on this: FBI having a playbook on how to handle terrorists. Gruber leverages that. If there were several different agencies competing, like companies competing for how we handle this, he would have to know all of them. He'd have to know which one Nakatomi is most likely to use given the situation and how they're most likely to respond. But instead, all he needs to know is the one and the one way that they handle terrorists.
It's kind of like literary analysis, right? So like the representation of them being able to control the entire tower based off of one singular computer also represents the fact that they can completely control the justice system based off of their singular
Yep.
playbook.
Yep. All the centralization of authority and power. And then in the helicopter, we have the 2 FBI agents talking. The one says, "I figure we take out the terrorists and lose 20 to 25% of the hostages, tops." And the other FBI agent says, "I can live with that." Now, before
Both of them die.
both of them die, which I'm
Fiery
for.
blaze.
But I mean, we watch that and we think these guys are absolute lunatics. But then we look through what we know the FBI has done, right? The things that they'll admit to. This looks good by comparison. So yeah, I'll step off my soapbox now. I'd appreciate pushback. Why? What am I missing here?
I don't know if you'll get pushback from me, Ben. I'll go and then I'll let Ben go. Like, I'm not too educated when it comes to this category of organizations. Like I hope that I never have to interact with the FBI on bad terms. You know, so for me,
They're
like,
listening to this podcast. They're
I
half
hope
of our
so.
listeners, I hope.
I mean, this is a good episode. If you're out there,
Don't take my money.
yeah, put a message in our comment box there.
Yeah, if you're with the FBI, let us know.
And our NSA agents listen to all our phones.
Yeah.
So you can chime in
like-
too.
Again, things that they've told us that they do.
Yeah, Monopoly is not great. Like, I mean, if you only have one option, you have nothing to compare to know if that one option's bad or good. So like,
Right.
I know I'm repeating a little bit what you're saying, Nelson, but just making it clear in my head. Like,
Sure.
So like I don't disagree with you in that sense of like, yeah, it would make sense if you have different perspectives that would offer different solutions, because no terrorist situation is going to function the same.
Right.
Like, no one play.
It's like how the TSA is really good at preventing all the other, like the ways that have already happened.
Right. But that just creates more obstacles for terrorists to overcome. And then, oh, this is new. Like,
Yeah.
oh, put that in the new playbook.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'm going to give you much pushback just because, like, in this sense, like, yeah. And it kind of goes along the same things. Like, if the FBI and the LAPD would have just worked well together and share and been like, well, this is our perspective. Okay, well, here's our perspective, which like and vetted the options versus just going, no, we're going with the playbook. Shut up. Like, I can't push back too much, Nels. Like, in this specific scenario, I think you're right. Like, if there wasn't just one altruistic power in this situation that
Altruistic is generous, but go on.
is exaggeratory
Yeah.
language there, but like, so yeah, I'm not going to push back much. Because again, it is a fictional movie, but I've lived for 33 years, and unfortunately, I've seen my fair share of terrorist attacks in real life.
Yeah.
Or in
And
acts
really,
of terrorism.
and really,
not
in
just
America, we've not seen that many compared to a lot of the countries that
Correct.
the CIA works in.
Absolutely, yeah. So like, I know that unfortunately it's going to happen in different ways every time it happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would hope that they would have multiple options to handle situations, so they would have the best option to handle when a situation were to play out. So
Right.
I don't have pushback. I hope we never see something like this in real life, unfortunately. But like, yeah.
Yeah. With
So I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, but
no, I want pushback because I know, like, I'm really passionate about my biases,
yeah,
but I also know that these are my biases, and it's healthy to have your biases challenged.
yeah. And I'll disagree with you on some aspects, but this
yeah.
one specifically,
So
I see eye to eye with you.
one of the things
You
you
got
brought up
pretty
and I
eyes,
didn't
Nelson.
really address was
Beautiful Baby Blues.
why weren't they?
Baby blues.
Why didn't they cooperate more? And one thing I didn't address is what would the market do differently there? When we have a top-down structure like we do, there can only be one monopoly, right? Otherwise, it's no longer
It's
a
not
monopoly.
It's a
So that's why they compete.
Scrabble or Game of Life. or,
Plopamy.
Duopoly or oligarchy is when you get a few, but yeah, there's words for all of them. And
I
then
like
polyopoly is when you have several.
I was going to say Palopoly.
I'm
that's
happily
weird.
married
But-
to my wife. And I'm not into anything else.
Um,
So that's
So when you have only one, when there's only enough room for one, which is what we have with government solutions, then they have to compete. And they have to compete in such a way that there can only be one winner. In markets, there's a lot more collaboration between competitors than there is with government.
right.
Because there's room for everybody at the table.
Idealistically, you would think people would view this differently than when you're talking about lives versus talking about a business plan to sell lawnmowers, you know? Because like in this movie, we're talking about the safety of hostages and cops.
Yeah.
But in some other programs, we're talking about business plans for selling trees and plants and
Yeah.
appliances. So like I know the business system works in every caveat. Even like churches have business systems. So like it's like I understand, but like I think the amount of empathy or sympathy that's implemented in specific situations that have playbooks or business plans shouldn't be modified to whatever the weight of the situation is when it comes to safety of life, you know? So like in that situation where there's a hierarchy of FBI over LAPD. I get that. But when you're talking about saving people's lives, you figured they would just be a lot more easily going, no, okay, let's put our differences aside and go, first and foremost, we need to save these people.
Right.
And then I'll also be your boss. But we're going to save people. Not, hey, listen to me, but can we save people as well? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like in the movie it's reversed, but it should be, let's save people.
In the movie,
And acknowledge
the
status.
let's save people almost isn't even part of the discussion.
Unless you're Al.
Yeah.
Unless you're Al and John, no one else
true.
is really worrying about casualties.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's something that we've seen. We've seen plenty of.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a fictional hypothetical. We see lots of that.
Right.
Ben, your thoughts?
I'm going to have a hard time disagreeing with you as well. I think
We'll physically push you, Nelson, but as far as this podcast goes, verbally, we're going to agree with you. So,
Well, do you have any insights, Ben, that maybe something that I didn't cover or Jeff didn't mention?
I don't think so. I think you pretty much nailed it on the head. I think
I got a little passionate there at one point.
sure. No, that's all right. I agree with that. I think when there is no competition, the motives of the people serving in those positions has to be relatively self-centered, right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about doing the job to the best of your ability. It's about doing the job as to maintain or move up in your position.
right.
So like the whole thing, you can tell when the FBI shows up that the deputy sheriff basically gets flustered like he's on a first date.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's his
Because
dream job.
because his dream job is to
Nice.
work for the FBI and have bigger paycheck,
Yeah.
but also a higher sphere of influence.
Yeah, and if he can execute well on defending Nakatomi Tower, that means good for him for promotions, political leverage, all that.
So he's perfectly fine with going along with whatever the FBI wants because he wants to seem like he's playing ball with them.
Yeah.
They've probably been put in multiple situations where a percentage of people being lost has either been told to them is not only acceptable but necessary, to the point where now they're fine with the idea of losing 25% of the hostages. But also they have because of the monopoly of the FBI, they have no reason to work to a place where 25% of the hostages are saved, right?
Mm-hmm. There's no real negative consequences because that's what's allowable by the FBI.
Sure.
And I also want to clarify because there's a lot of people that say defund the police, and I'm very sympathetic to that. And a response I hear a lot is, but we need police. And I agree, which is why we need to defund them. And I know that sounds contradictory, so I would like to clarify that. If we defunded the police, hypothetically, the types of people, the heroic men and women who are willing to put their lives on the line to protect their communities, they don't disappear. But now there's accountability for the ones that are corrupt. And now there is a market where they can likely get paid even better for the very crucial service that they're providing and get better training, get better level of equipment, because markets always provide better goods than monopolies do. A question I like to ask people a lot is, what's something that the government's really good at? and a lot of people take a long time to give me an answer on that. And why should we assume that policing's any different?
But instead of defunding, I don't disagree with what you said, but like defunding sounds like Mount Everest.
Sure.
Just like doing something like that, flipping the table and just like
Right.
that's great. But like what about like re-strategizing the police, restructuring, re-educating, or new, or like just like what if maybe it's not defunding, but maybe it's changing the way we do police.
No, I agree.
Because I feel like there would be like almost
Right. So when some people say defund the police, what they mean is take away the funding and replace it with nothing.
I know what defunding means.
No, I know.
Easy now.
When I say that I'm sympathetic to that, what I mean is, and the reason I clarified those people don't disappear is because they're going to see a need in their communities.
Right.
And they're going to step up and make businesses and agencies.
You're not wrong there, but what you'll see is a gap.
Yeah.
Because if you defund the police, there's going to be this time like, okay, I still want to save someone.
Right.
But now I don't know if I'm legally allowed.
So
now I don't know if I can, because like, even police officers have to follow rules. Like there's things they can't do if they see someone in danger, because now people can sue because you did this wrong. You saved me the incorrect way. So like,
cover The Incredibles.
If you defund, if you defund the police, there would be a gap of time where those heroic people, those Gryffindor people are still going to be like,
I want more Hufflepuffs.
I want to save you, but now my life would be on the line. My family would be on the line because I'm going to step out and do something that I may get in trouble for.
100%.
Because now, it's like, that's what I'm saying. I don't think defunding's the answer, but I do think a change is needed.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
I think
there would be a gap.
I think so. There would be a gap, and I would
gap here.
Clarify that I think ideally you would have a transitory way of making it free market. That said, to quote Roy Rothbard, if you put a button in front of me that would just eliminate the government immediately, I would press it so fast. Do I think transition is preferable? 100%. But if you put that button in front of me, I'm pushing it. If you put a button in front of me that defunds these programs, I'm pushing that button because I know that these brave men and women are going to step up and do the job anyway, and they're going to provide it at a market competition, and we're going to get safer streets, safer for the police officers as well, better training, better gear, all that, and it's going to end up coming out cheaper than it ever costs us in our taxes. Because you'll still pay for it. Like they're going to get paid some way, and it's guaranteed it's going to be cheaper than the monopoly pays for it. Should we move on?
I'm good.
Or do you have more thoughts?
Just another, like, where we're at now in our society.
Yeah.
The way we view terrorism. It's a hot button word where pretty much anything can be viewed as not anything, but like a lot of things that aren't terrorism can be viewed as terrorism.
Yeah.
And I think that's well shown in this movie, where they're not terrorists, they're thieves. They never say that they're terrorists until they talk to the FBI.
But they're inciting terror. Like there's literally a room
not
full
for
of people.
Do you know what the
reasons.
definition of terrorism is, though?
Or political or religious
That's right.
reasons.
So it's property destruction or violence to move forward a political or religious agenda.
But there's no okay. So if you're breaking down the word
Terror.
what the word is, like the terror is like it's to do terror.
Right.
So the definition of terror has no adherence to religion.
No.
So why would terrorism have an adherence to because because you can incite terror, that would make you a terrorism by definition. A terrorist.
Right.
You're a terrorist.
But so yeah,
But without-
good old English grammar, you gotta screw this up for us.
So without a political or religious motive, it's not technically terrorism.
But they're inciting terror.
They are inciting terror,
So
absolutely.
terrorists.
But these guys are doing it
for money.
for money. They're thieves.
Terrorists.
So
Terror
and
thieves.
the really interesting thing about terrorism, when you look at it correctly, when you look at what this word technically means, we see that like recently we've had several different situations where people have thrown soup on paintings and or glued themselves to the wall to protest oil.
Tomato soup, man.
Soup on paintings?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Mona Lisa,
Tomato soup
a
on
couple
Van
things
Gogh.
by Da Vinci, I think. Like important works of
Like
art.
Campbell's soup or like
Yeah.
Campbell's?
I mean, it was in
This is
Europe.
Campbell's tomato soup.
Was it Campbell's though? It was Europe. Do they have Campbell's in
Yeah,
Europe?
they have Campbell's there. But anyway, they super glue themselves to the wall, throw tomato soup on the wall and this stuff.
Good for them.
And technically, if you're looking literally at what terrorism is, this is property destruction to move forward a political position.
They're protesters now.
That's vandalism,
Yeah.
not terrorism. If you're
But
throwing
that-
soup at a picture, no one's getting scared about that.
I mean,
They're just going.
you are
let's
making.
go to the next exhibit.
No, if you're gluing yourself to the wall and throwing and destroying property, you are making people feel unsafe.
I don't know. I'd probably stay and watch.
I mean, I
I was
wouldn't
like,
like,
I want to see where this guy's going with this.
hang out with these people.
Yeah, like,
right?
it's like I maybe my level
End
of
up in a van down by the
terror,
river.
Like, I don't know. Someone's got guns taking over a building. Terror.
Yeah.
Someone's throwing soup at a wall. I'm not real scared. I'm more hungry.
All right.
Like the literal definition of terror, soup doesn't scare me. Guns and shooting people scare me. Terrorism, vandalism.
I know, but you don't know right away that it's soup. You don't know anything that's going on. You just see two young people glue themselves to the wall and destroy art that
Is
you've
this
come to
Gorilla
see.
Glue?
It was
We gotta use
some kind of
some sort
I
crazy-
don't know, but
So,
This could be
that's so
strong
hard to get
glue.
off.
and then, of course, you've got environmental activists around the world who are destroying property. They're putting people.
Vandalism.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're putting people at risk in traffic situations. Okay. I don't think that we've had bodily harm yet by these environmental activists, but it's not far away from that. And destruction of property is a violation of rights.
Right.
And so it's important to say, hey, this is what this is. You're destroying property. You're making people feel unsafe. That is a form of terror. Is it the same as drone striking a wedding and killing 13-year-olds? No, that's something that the U.S. government does. But it's still terrorism.
So you're making a good argument that these people in the Nagatomi Tower were terrorists.
No, because it wasn't a political.
They were doing more than throwing soup.
No, I know. My point is, without the political or religious motive, it's not terrorism.
By Webster's definition.
By the
But they are bringers
by
of
the
terror.
working definition of terrorism that the U.S. government uses as well.
But they are people that incite terror.
Right.
Terrorists.
But without the religious or political motive, it's not terrorism.
That's dumb.
I'm not saying I agree with the definition. I'm saying it's important that we use words correctly.
The discrepancy in the definition, I feel, we can edit this out because I don't know if this is true or not.
I love that.
Is the purpose of it is to do that, is to incite terror. When you hear terrorists,
Yeah.
you're not thinking about, okay, well, are they politically
That's true.
motivated?
Like,
You're
okay,
thinking, oh,
you're
they're
scaring
terrorists.
me. Yeah, you're scaring me right now, but what's your denomination of belief?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the definition of terrorism may or may not be correct, but the reason for the word
right.
is to be a blanket emotional response by people, like fascists or not.
Okay. I wanted to fact check myself just in case my definition was incorrect.
I'm not assuming what you know is wrong. I'm just saying, like,
No,
I'm more mad at the English grammar.
So, Wikipedia, first line, there is no universal agreement on the legal definition of terrorism, although there exists a consensus academic definition created by scholars. Skipping a few paragraphs. The United Nations General Assembly condemned terrorist acts, that's very bold of them, by using the following political description of terrorism. This was in 1994, so this is the UN definition of terrorism.
6 years after the bombing of Nagatomi Tower.
Exactly. This is their definition. Criminal acts intended or calculated to provoke a state of terror in the general public, a group of persons, or particular persons for political purposes are in any circumstances unjustifiable. Whatever the considerations of a political, philosophical, ideological, racial, ethnic, religious, or any other nature that may be invoked to justify them. Your instinct is good, but it is a criminal act intended or calculated to provoke a state of terror with a specific ideological motivation. So, for example, the Joker, he creates terror, but he's just an agent of chaos. There is no purpose. So he's not a terrorist.
Just wants to watch the world burn.
He just wants to watch the world burn. Now, you might say that that's his ideology.
Sure,
but, right?
Yeah. Out of all we've talked about, and it's not you, Nelson, it's just like the idea of like, he is a terrorist. The Joker is a terrorist. Like terrorist.
Okay,
someone who brings terror. Like, definition aside, by breaking down the word terrorist. Now we're just circling around this now.
No, it's good.
Terrorist. Like, I'm mad at the English language.
But if I grant you that definition,
I would love that.
Let's say that I grant you the definition that
Please,
if you create terror, you are a terrorist.
Yeah.
University of Tennessee wins a football game. They tear out goalposts and they throw it into the river. That's terrorism. By Jeff's definition.
Yeah.
Definition.
Yeah.
Definition. Definition. I respect your double down, although I think
it's our first T-shirt. Definition. I respect your double down.
What happens?
I think the ideological motivation is necessary for terrorism.
So what happens if I throw a rock through my own window to scare Brianna? Am I a terrorist?
You're inciting terror.
All right.
Like, okay, my definition solely comes from just the simplicity of the breaking down of the word.
Sure.
I don't disagree that most of the time when terrorism is being talked about, it is coming from a religious or political view. I get that. But like, just grammatically,
it is interesting.
Terrorist.
They're terror thieves.
One who terrorizes.
Yeah.
Like, I can be a terrorist some days. Like, my wife would probably consider me a terrorist some days the way I screw up our house and make a mess. And
children are terrorists.
Right. So yeah. Yeah. So
Yikes.
I don't want to get too pig-headed about this, but
it's not a great definition.
Right. Like, because like if someone be like, "Oh, what's okay?" Like, because like you teach students in school to, break down words and like philosophical, like phila and sophical both mean two different things to come together to mean something bigger.
Yeah.
Terrorism, you would break that down and go, okay, one who brings terror.
Sure.
Terrorist.
Right.
So that would be a blanket statement for anyone who brings terror.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm coming from. Like, I know that you can get more specific with it, but like, if you're bringing terror, you're a terrorist. If you're holding hostages, shooting people, blowing up parts of buildings, terrorism.
Yeah.
Like, you're inciting terror.
This is a good segue.
Also, you can be a thief and a terrorist. Why can't you be both?
They're a terror thief.
Terror thief.
Terror thief.
Yeah.
It's a good segue to my second major observation.
Love it. Bring it.
Which is that Hans Gruber, we kind of get from the movie that he never says outright that he's not a terrorist.
Right.
When he's called a terrorist by Joe Takagaki or whatever his name is, I'm pretty sure I'm getting that wrong, he says, why would you call, like, whoever said anything about me being a terrorist?
Right.
So I've got a quote here. Gruber says to the people when he first brings them together, Due to the Nakatomi Corporation's legacy of greed around the globe, it is about to be taught a lesson of real power. You have to keep in context that this is the late 80s. Socialist and communist terrorist organizations very much were active around the world, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So he's trying to establish with the hostages this idea that he is a socialist terrorist, okay? And that all of this is politically motivated. Then Tagaki, when they're upstairs looking at the model of the Philippines bridge that they're going to build,
Right.
he says, is this what this is about? Our building project in Indonesia? Not Philippines, Indonesia. Contrary to what you people think, we're going to develop that region, not exploit it. To which Gruber says, I believe you. I read the article in Forbes. And the first time you're watching this, you kind of just assume that he's mocking him. But no, he's literally saying, oh, no, I do believe that that's what you guys intended to do. I'm not actually here out of any political motivation. I'm just here to steal your bonds. Then we could get from the media later when they identify Hans Gruber. They say that he's part of the Volksfrei movement. Volksfrei is German, translates to free people. Volksfrei is inspired by the real-world Baader-Meinhof group, which was a militant Marxist-Leninist group in West Germany. So Gruber worked with Volksfrei, gets kicked out of Volksfrei, and brings a handful of these militants with him. That's his thief group. The movie positions them as ex-terrorists.
Right. Ex-terrorist thieving.
Thieving, exactly. And he's using the label of terrorist just as leverage against the FBI's playbook on what to do when there's terrorists.
Right.
Which is cut the
To
power.
play into his hand, yeah.
Exactly. Then in Gruber's fake demands, he lists Canada's, he wants a bunch of people set free.
Just to buy time.
Yeah, political prisoners from around the world. This is to buy time and to convince the FBI that he's a terrorist. So he wants Canada's Liberté de Québec set free, Ireland's New Provo Front, and Asian Dawn. All three of these are inspired by real-world socialist terrorist groups
The
that
troubles
existed
were
at the
happening
time.
during this time, right, in Ireland?
That's right.
Yeah.
So the Canada's Liberté de Québec is inspired by Front de Libération de Québec, which was a Marxist Québécois separatist group who kidnapped 2 people in 1970 and accidentally killed 1. This is a big black mark on Canadian history that most people, like 30 and younger, probably aren't familiar with.
Correct.
Ireland's New Provo
I'm not
Front.
Canadian, so.
Yeah, Canadians aren't even familiar with it, like young Canadians. Ireland's New Provo Front is inspired by the IRA, which was the Irish Provisional Republic Army, sometimes called the Provos. They were socialist separatists who were the most active during the era of Irish history known as the Troubles, which Ben just pointed out. Ben, tell us a bit about the Troubles. What do you know?
That a lot of people died.
A lot of people died. Roughly 1,800, including 600 civilians, were killed by the IRA.
The Troubles is also what I get when I eat Coachy House pizza in Worcester.
There you go.
Yeah.
Then Asian Dawn is inspired by the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, which was a revolutionary socialist separatist group in Sri Lanka. It caused a civil war, 80 to 100,000 people killed in that civil war. And then I just pulled some numbers on socialist movements throughout the years, some of the big hits. Benito Mussolini's fascist Italy, 2,000 dead. Salvador Allende in Chile, 3,000 dead. Fidel Castro in Cuba, 10,000. Pol Pot in Cambodia, 2 million. The Kim Dynasty in North Korea, 3.5 million. Adolf Hitler's National Socialist Movement, 6 million. Vladimir Lenin's Leninist Marxism, over 20 million. Joseph Stalin's Stalinist Marxism, 20 to 60 million, and Mao Zedong's communist movement in China, 65 million people dead.
But Nelson, that wasn't real socialism.
Real socialism's never been tried, to which I would respond, real capitalism's never been tried, Ben.
That's true.
So yeah, this is a bit of a downer, but this is context needed to understand why Gruber said what he said, why the FBI responded the way it did. We, being in our 30s, now 50
Happy
years...
birthday, Ben.
I'm 27, thank you.
Yeah, well, all right. Us being in our late 20s, early 30s, we don't remember the Cold War.
I remember
No.
the cold, though.
Like, I was born, and a few days later, the Iron Curtain fell, right? Like, I've not lived in a time where the Cold War was something needed to be thought about. So all of those numbers are in living memory of people that are alive today, but were very much part of the psyche of media not long before this, right?
Sure.
The Cold War was officially over at this point, but the USSR still existed, right? Mao was happening at this time, I'm pretty sure.
When did the Soviet
Stalin's still
Union
alive.
fall?
Huh?
Was that 91?
91.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like the Troubles are happening at this time, right? So like, a lot of this, we remember it as being way long ago, and it really isn't. You
Sure.
know?
So it doesn't really resonate with us, but to the people when this movie came out.
Him being a terrorist is a believable thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Now, going back to a previous comment, it is interesting today, the groups that aren't labeled terrorist that would have been 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, that meet the definition of terrorist. People creating terror through property destruction and harm to life for a political or philosophical or whatever motive. Those are my two big takeaways in the movie. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
For a movie that I really enjoyed watching and I was thoroughly entertained, and after watching, going, I didn't get too many notes. This is the longest episode we've done so far.
Yeah, we'll edit some of this down probably, but
Sure.
But no,
I was surprised going into this movie. I wasn't expecting much, and I was surprised just how much there was to talk about here.
I came in with little notes, and I'm leaving hadn't very much enjoyed this conversation and opened my eyes to some things that I did not see. Yeah, which is about every episode. I do want to. I'm assuming we're closing the wrapping up here. I do want to, in light of we haven't mentioned one movie in this episode yet that we normally mention in every episode.
Yeah,
and I have a fact that connects this movie to Clockwork Orange.
Oh, terrific!
Gross.
It was incidental at first, but now it's intentional. We're gonna bring up Clockwork Orange every episode.
So, and this is an IMDb fact. So this is just straight off IMDb. At the suggestion of director John McTiernan, Ludwig van Beethoven's Ode to Joy, Ninth Symphony, Fourth Movement, is the musical theme of the terrorists. This is IMDb. He refers to them as terrorists. Hans Gruber, the terrorist leader, even hums it at one point in the movie, while he is on the elevator with Mr. Tagaki. Film composer Michael Kamen at first thought it was a sacrilege to use Beethoven in an action movie, telling McTiernan, "I will make mincemeat out of Wagner or Strauss for you, but why Beethoven?" McTiernan replied that Ode to Joy had been the theme of the ultra-violence in Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. Kamen, a Kubrick fan, then agreed. So Ode to Joy was used because of Clockwork Orange.
Huh. Fascinating.
Yeah,
I was just like, this movie keeps coming up.
Yeah,
like, I didn't even try to find something that connects us back to bringing this movie back up. But I was going through these trivias of
you
Die Hard,
stumbled on it,
and I'm like, oh my god, I have to say this.
We can't escape it.
I can't. So I love it. So yeah, so that song was put in there because of the director being a fan of Clockwork Orange, Stanley Kubrick. Yeah. So are we done with the discussion? I have a couple things we do at the end of every episode to kind of. Yeah. Is there any other?
I
final
think
thoughts?
so. Ben, do you have any final thoughts?
I mean, they're not important.
No.
No. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we get into the final?
You can put this wherever in the thing, but I thought it was for like all the action movies at the time.
Yeah.
John McClane or Bruce Willis was not at all like fitting that description.
No.
Most people had known him from the sitcom he was in before.
Yeah.
It was called Moonlighting, which was a dramatic romantic comedy where he was mostly comedic. And so a lot of people weren't going to take him seriously for this role as an action star. And I think they portrayed it very well in the fact that by the end of this movie, he's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
Right. And you see other movies where like the hero comes out and he's got like one or two scratches on his face, but he's like, besides being oiled up and sweaty, he's fine.
Yeah.
Right. But over
John
the course
McClane's
of
haggard.
Oh, for sure. He can get shot. He gets, slides down an elevator shaft and all that stuff. While there are some instances where like people get out of situations where they definitely shouldn't have, like Carl, the big guy with the long hair, there's some things that happen to him that he should have died instantly.
Yeah.
But I think
Carl.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I think
it's a walking
I think the movie did a really good job at portraying like a realistic. Like one of my favorite scenes is the fight scene between
Hans and John.
No, Carl and John McClane. You see, John McClane is experienced, but he also knows exactly like where he is in like the hierarchy of that fight.
Right.
He knows that he's smaller. He knows that he's less powered, and the way that he fights presents himself as, when they stumble into the room, the first thing he does is a flurry of fast, quick, hard punches as fast as he can, hoping to incapacitate him instantly. Obviously, that doesn't happen.
It's something that can go unappreciated now because it almost feels campy compared to what we get in action movies today.
Sure,
but for its time, it was groundbreaking in that regard. You're right.
And I will say, the trailer that we watched last week did not do the movie justice.
No,
for like the trailer made it seem like a cheese fest.
Yeah,
this movie. And this is part of the questions I'm going to ask. But this movie's a great movie.
Yeah, let's spin off into the questions right now.
It's a good action movie, and it's not over the top cheesy. There's moments that I like the word campy. It hits hard. Was that it for your note, Ben?
Yeah.
Okay. So getting into these questions, then, first of all, would you guys recommend this movie?
For sure.
What would you change the rating? It's rated R. Would you change the rating?
Nope.
No, I agree.
No.
There's a little bit of nudity.
Slow motion scene of the dude getting his
unnecessary
knees
nudity
blown out
throughout it.
I don't know how many business parties have sex going on, but I feel like that was more unnecessary than the poster.
They also established that one guy doing cocaine. Like this is Wolf of Wall Street style.
You're right. But yeah, I would definitely recommend the movie to preferred adult ages.
Sure.
Specifically, mostly for violence, but just because there is some nudity in it. And I would not change the rating. The one question that we don't ask, but we're asking for this one: is it a Christmas movie?
Oh,
it's 100% a Christmas movie.
100%. Yeah, I just want to make sure we establish that there's no debate about it.
Oh, there's not.
Has it aged well?
I think so.
I don't think there's any reason.
Practical stunts. Yeah. There's not there's no CGI.
The explosions are way too big.
I think they're just right.
They went through so much money, and I forget what the actual amount of money that they spent on glass was.
Oh, on glass? I don't know that specific fact.
So much glass was broken.
Yeah. And did you know the building that they filmed in was the actual building of
Fox Century?
So they actually build themselves to use the facility.
Yeah.
When recording this, but they knew that they had essentially unlimited use of the building when recording because it was recorded at the studios. Last question here. Would this be in your personal top 250?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it is. I mean, for me, and most of it's nostalgia. It's something that I watched multiple times with my brother and dad growing up. So
yeah, nostalgia is a powerful thing in how you evaluate.
Yeah, there's not one. I mean, I haven't seen the last Die Hard, but out of all the other ones, I haven't seen a Die Hard movie that I didn't like.
Right.
So.
And Bruce Willis, great actor, a believable character. I said this last time. I think it's going to be a hard one for me to answer until we get 250 movies into our podcast. But it's a great movie. I don't know if I can name 250 more movies that are better than this. I can name a lot of movies better than this. But to say that it's either 251 or further down, I don't know. It's a pretty good movie, and I would watch it again, and I'll probably put it in my rotation now of Christmas movies. It's been years since I've seen it, but now since I have re-seen it, I need to watch this every Christmas. So, it's a good movie. Let's see. Is there any final thing with the movie we need to acknowledge? Those are the questions that we always ask. Is there any other final thoughts referring to the movie?
I don't think so. I would like to just bring up again, though, Tuttle Twins, check it out. If you find value in our show, we've got a link down below where you can support us. We believe in value for value. So if you find value in it, we ask that you provide us some value. You can either do that monetarily through buymeacoffee.com, which is linked below, or if you even just share this with some friends, post it on your Facebook, Instagram, wherever you are, get somebody else to listen to it. That does big things for Jeff and I.
If you can't financially support us, we get it, we understand. Mm-hmm. But a share on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook means just the same to us by spreading the word. So,
absolutely.
I mean, obviously, we'd love to be financially sustainable, but more than that, we'd love to spread what we're doing to other people. So if you can't pay, share it. Easy as that. So
That's right.
but we're just glad you're listening either way.
And we'll be back in a couple weeks with Lucas Engelhardt, Dr. Lucas Engelhardt. He's a professor of economics at Akron University.
We have a trailer to watch, don't we?
That's right. He's going to be joining us for It's a Wonderful Life, which Ben has told us was one of his favorite movies.
One of them. Christmas movies.
His favorite Christmas movies.
Christmas are the least of my favorite genres, but yeah.
I believe I watched it last year, so it's still somewhat fresh for me.
I'm pretty familiar with it. I saw the movie and then I saw the play a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But so do we still want to watch the trailer and then
Let's-
talk about it, or just
Let's watch the trailer and let's comment on how well we think it fits what we remember of the movie.
Okay, we'll be right back.
It'll be linked in the show notes. Check it out. All right, so trailer reactions. Ben, you first. This is a movie that you love. Tell me, what do you think of that trailer?
I don't like it at all, man. I don't think it speaks to anything that happens in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't do much for promoting the kind of dialogue in the movie.
Sure.
Well,
Trailers just must have been
don't
different back then.
Almost the first
you ever get
minute of the
tired
trailer
of
is just silence.
reading things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first minute of the trailer
No
is just
dialogue.
them saying who's going to be in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Full House style.
No, I'm excited to rewatch it.
Yeah.
But I guess
With
we
fresh
don't
eyes.
necessarily need to break down the trailer because we've all recently seen. We're familiar with the story. But yeah, that trailer would not sell me on the movie if I was seeing
Right.
it for the first time.
No.
No.
Well, then again,
But-
people were wired a bit different back then. So.
That's true.
Right. I do have a desire as someone who wants to be a movie buff and wants to be someone who enjoys arts and entertainment. I do have a desire of wanting to like it just because it is a classic. But I'm going to tell you now, spoiler alert for the next podcast, I struggle with this movie.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll change. I have not rewatched it since before we're going to record the next episode.
Yeah.
So maybe my opinion will change in the last couple of years. But as of right now, I know that I am not a fan of this movie. So I'm willing to give it a second chance.
Mm-hmm. And our guest for next episode,
Yes.
he's also not a wild fan of this movie. But the reason that that I sought him out is a major plot point of this movie is
Terrorism.
Is
Wait,
no
something
that was
Thieves.
Die Hard.
Terror Thieves.
Terror Thieves. No, is banking and banking systems. And
Terror
and-
Thieves.
Yeah, Terror Thieves. And it's something that I can speak on confidently, but it's something that I wanted somebody who's really a proper expert on to come on and and clarify and talk about with us.
Any math questions we'll just give to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So I'm looking forward to that.
That's the show, Nels.
That's the show.
That's the show, Ben.
It is. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you
Ben,
so much.
this has been
You were,
great.
Really
you were
fun.
excellent, Ben.
Yes.
Thanks.
If any of the diehards ever make it back into the top, like if any of them creep into the somehow ratings change and we get more
Probably
Bruce
not.
Willis, we'll bring you back on, or maybe we'll bring you back on for another movie.
I would love to.
But we
That'd
are
be
glad
dope.
you're here, and this was fun.
I think that's going to do it for us this time around. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Please share this, like, comment, subscribe, and
Buy us a coffee.
buy us a coffee. Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks for listening. We had a great time putting this together for you.
To join the conversation, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Silver Screen Biases.
And on Twitter at Screen Biases.
We believe in value for value, so if you found value in our show, we ask you to consider supporting us.
Links to our social media and support can be found in the show notes.